The water hit her like 1,000 fists, dragging Adelaide Harper beneath the churning surface of Lodgepole Creek as the spring thaw turned the normally placid stream into a roaring monster that cared nothing for her desperate struggle to breathe. She had been foolish trying to cross on horseback when the bridge had washed out 2 days prior, but the medicine her brother needed was in her saddlebag, and he was burning with fever back at their homestead. The horse had panicked halfway across, throwing her into the frigid water that filled her lungs and pulled her down with merciless fingers. Her skirts wrapped around her legs like iron chains, and the current tumbled her over rocks and debris until she did not know which way was up or down. The world became a blur of brown water and pain, and Adelaide felt her strength leaving her body with each passing second. Ryan Valdez had been riding the fence line of his ranch when he heard the terrified scream cut short by the rushing water. He spurred his bay gelding toward the sound, without thought, his heart pounding as he reached the swollen creek bank and saw the flash of blue fabric being swept downstream. The woman's dark hair appeared and disappeared beneath the surface, her arms flailing weakly. Ryan did not hesitate. He urged his horse into the water at an angle, calculating where the current would carry her, and when she tumbled past, he leaned far out of his saddle and caught her arm. The force nearly pulled him from his horse, but Ryan had spent 26 years learning to stay in the saddle, and he hauled the woman up with strength born of desperation and years of hard ranch work. She was limp and heavy with water, coughing and gasping as he dragged her across his lap and turned his horse back toward the bank. The gelding struggled against the current, hooves slipping on the rocky creek bed, but finally found purchase and lunged up onto dry land. Ryan slid from the saddle with the woman in his arms and laid her on the grass. She was coughing up water, her whole body shaking with cold and shock. Her lips had a blue tinge that worried him. "Easy now," he said, his voice rough with concern. "You are safe. Just breathe." Adelaide's eyes focused on his face, taking in the dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, the strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and brown eyes that held genuine worry. She tried to speak, but could only cough more water from her lungs. Her body shook violently, and she realized with embarrassment that her dress was plastered to her body, transparent in places. She tried to cover herself, but her hands would not obey properly. Ryan saw her distress and quickly shrugged out of his leather jacket, draping it over her shoulders. "We need to get you warm and dry. My ranch is closest, just over that rise. Can you ride?" "My brother," she managed to gasp out between coughs. "Medicine. He needs medicine." "First we get you warm before you catch pneumonia," Ryan said firmly. "Then we will worry about your brother. Where is he?" "Harper Homestead, east of Julesburg. Please, he's been sick for 3 days." Ryan knew the place, a struggling homestead that had belonged to old Thomas Harper before he had died last winter. He had not known Harper had children. "I will get him help, I promise, but you are no good to him dead. Come on now." He lifted her easily, surprised by how light she was despite the water-heavy clothes, and set her on his horse before swinging up behind her. Adelaide leaned back against his chest because she had no strength left to sit upright, and felt the solid warmth of him seep through the cold that had invaded her bones. Ryan wrapped one arm around her waist to steady her and urged the gelding toward his ranch house. The ride seemed to take forever and no time at all. Adelaide drifted in and out of awareness, conscious mainly of the strong arm holding her secure and the steady rhythm of the horse's gait. When they reached the ranch house, a sturdy structure of logs and stone, Ryan carried her inside and called out for his housekeeper. "Mrs. Chen, I need hot water and blankets, now." An older Chinese woman appeared from the kitchen, her eyes widening at the sight of the dripping girl in Ryan's arms. She asked no questions, but immediately set to work, gesturing toward Ryan's bedroom. Within minutes, Adelaide found herself wrapped in warm blankets by the fire, while Mrs. Chen helped her out of the wet clothes with efficient, gentle hands. Ryan had left the room, but Adelaide could hear him giving instructions to someone outside. "Drink this," Mrs. Chen said, pressing a cup of hot tea into Adelaide's hands. The liquid burned going down but spread warmth through her chest. "You are very lucky. The creek has taken 3 people this spring already. Mr. Ryan is a good man." Adelaide's teeth chattered against the cup. "My brother. He needs medicine from Dr. Patterson in Julesburg. I just picked it up when I tried to cross." "Mr. Ryan will take care of it," Mrs. Chen assured her. "You rest now." But Adelaide could not rest. She tried to stand, swaying dangerously, and Mrs. Chen had to catch her. I must go to him. You do not understand. Our parents died last year. It is just Edmund and me. If something happens to him, I will have no one. Ryan appeared in the doorway, having heard her distress. I'm sending my foreman to town for the doctor and medicine. He will ride to your homestead and bring both. Your brother will be seen to within 2 hours, but you must stay here and recover. You swallowed half the creek and you are hypothermic. If you try to ride now, you will fall off your horse and drown in a puddle. The matter-of-fact way he said it made Adelaide laugh, though it came out more as a sob. The tension that had been holding her together since Edmund had fallen ill finally broke, and tears streamed down her face. She was so tired, so scared, and this stranger was being kinder to her than anyone had been since her father had died. "Ah, I am sorry," she whispered. "I'm not usually such a watering pot." "You nearly died today," Ryan said quietly, moving into the room and kneeling beside her chair. "You are allowed to cry, but your brother will be fine. Doc Patterson is the best in 3 counties, and my foreman Jake will make sure he gets there fast." Adelaide looked into his eyes and saw only sincerity. She nodded slowly. "Thank you. I do not know how I can ever repay you." "No payment needed. This is what neighbors do." He stood and moved toward the door. "Rest now. Mrs. Chen will look after you. I will check on you in a bit." Adelaide did rest, though sleep eluded her as she worried about Edmund. Mrs. Chen brought her soup and more tea, and eventually some of Mrs. Chen's own clothes to wear since Adelaide's dress was ruined. The clothes were too short but clean and dry, and Adelaide felt almost human again as evening fell. Ryan came to check on her as the sun set, finding her sitting by the window watching the road for any sign of his foreman returning. "Jake is good at what he does," he said. "He will get there." "I should have waited for the water to go down," Adelaide said softly. "I was foolish, but Edmund was so hot with fever, and I was afraid." "You were brave," Ryan corrected. "Foolish too, maybe, but brave. Not many people would risk that crossing even for someone they loved." Adelaide turned to look at him properly for the first time since he had pulled her from the water. In the lamplight, she could see he was younger than she had first thought, maybe late 20s, with strong features and eyes that seemed to see more than most people. There was a scar on his left cheekbone, a thin white line that gave him a roguish look. He had changed into dry clothes, dark trousers, and a blue shirt that made his eyes look almost black. "How long have you lived here?" she asked, partly to distract herself from watching the road and partly because she was curious about this man who had saved her life. "Yeah, I bought this ranch 3 years ago," Ryan said, settling into a chair across from her. "It was run down then, but it had good water rights and decent grazing land. I've been building it up slowly. We run about 300 head of cattle now, and I've been breaking horses on the side." "That's why you ride so well," Adelaide said. "I've never seen anyone move that fast or control a horse in rough water like that." Ryan shrugged, looking uncomfortable with the praise. "I grew up on a ranch in Texas. My father made sure all his sons could ride before we could walk. It is just what you do." "Are your parents still in Texas?" "My father is. My mother passed when I was 15. My brothers all stayed to work the family ranch, but I wanted something of my own." He paused, then added, "I'm the youngest of 5 sons. There was not going to be much for me to inherit, and I did not want to spend my life working someone else's land, even if it was family." Adelaide understood that sentiment well. "My father came to Colorado right after the war. He had been a doctor in Pennsylvania, but he wanted a fresh start. He filed a homestead claim and brought my mother and brother out here in 1869. I was born the next year, right there in that little cabin." "That must have been hard on your mother," Ryan said. "This country was even rougher then." "She was strong. She had to be." Adelaide's voice grew softer. "She died of pneumonia 3 winters ago. Then father passed last November. Heart failure, the doctor said. I think he just missed her too much to keep going." "And now it is just you and your brother working that homestead?" Adelaide nodded. "Edmund is 20. He is good with crops and animals, but he is not strong. He was sick a lot as a child, and it left him with weak lungs. When he caught this fever, I was terrified it would turn into pneumonia like what took Mother." Ryan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Listen, Adelaide, if you need help working that land, I can send some of my men over. We could get your planting done quick. Make sure you have enough put by for winter." "I cannot pay them," Adelaide said, her pride stinging even as she recognized the generosity of the offer. "I am not asking you to pay. I am offering as a neighbor. We barely know each other." "Well," Ryan said with a slight smile, "we can fix that. I am Ryan Valdez. I'm 26 years old. I like my coffee black, my horses fast, and my fences well maintained. I play a decent hand of poker. I cannot sing worth a damn, and I have been told I am too stubborn for my own good." "Your turn." Adelaide found herself smiling despite her worry. "Adelaide Harper. I am 23. I can outshoot most men. I make terrible coffee, and I once won a pie competition at the county fair. I rid everything I can get my hands on. I'm probably just as stubborn as you, and I really hate feeling helpless." "Then let me help you feel less helpless. Let my men help with the planting." Before Adelaide could answer, they heard the sound of horses approaching. She jumped to her feet and ran to the door, Ryan close behind her. In the twilight, she could see two riders approaching, one of them leading a horse with a man slumped in the saddle. "Edmund!" Adelaide ran out into the yard, bare feet flying across the dirt. Ryan caught her before she could reach the horse, holding her back as his foreman, Jake, dismounted. "He is all right, miss," Jake said quickly. "Just sleeping. Doc gave him something for the fever and said he needed rest. Doc says it is not pneumonia, just a bad lung infection. With the medicine and rest, he should be fine in a week or so." The relief was so intense that Adelaide's knees buckled. Ryan caught her, holding her upright as she sobbed. "Thank you. Oh, thank you." The other rider was Doc Patterson, a gray-haired man with kind eyes and steady hands. He dismounted and came over to check on Adelaide. "Young lady, Jake tells me you took a swim in Lodgepole Creek. Let me have a look at you." Adelaide submitted to his examination, answering his questions while keeping her eyes on Edmund, who was being helped down from his horse by Ryan and Jake. They carried him inside and laid him on the sofa that Mrs. Chen had quickly covered with clean blankets. Edmund's face was flushed with fever, but not as terribly as it had been that morning, and his breathing seemed easier. "He will be fine," Doc Patterson told Adelaide after examining Edmund again. "The medicine is working already. Keep him warm and quiet, make sure he takes the full course of medicine even after he feels better, and he should make a complete recovery. As for you, young lady, you are a very lucky girl. Another minute in that water and you would have drowned. You should rest for a few days yourself. You took in a lot of water, and your body needs time to recover." "She can stay here," Ryan said before Adelaide could protest. "We have room, and Mrs. Chen can look after both of them." "I cannot impose on you like that," Adelaide began, but Ryan cut her off. "You are not imposing. You are accepting help from a neighbor. There is a difference." Doc Patterson looked between them with a knowing smile. "That sounds like a good plan. I will come back tomorrow to check on both of you. Ryan, make sure she rests. No trying to do chores or work. She needs at least 3 days of doing nothing." Adelaide wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was catching up with her. The warmth of the house, the relief of knowing Edmund would be all right, and the aftermath of nearly drowning all combined to make her feel like she was made of wet rope. She nodded weakly. After Doc Patterson left, Mrs. Chen served a simple dinner of stew and bread. Edmund woke long enough to eat a little and recognize his sister before falling back into a healing sleep. Adelaide sat beside him, holding his hand, until Ryan gently pulled her away. "He's fine. You heard the doctor. But you need to sleep too, or you will be no good to him when he wakes up properly." Mrs. Chen had prepared the guest room, a small but comfortable space with a window that looked out toward the mountains. Adelaide was so tired she barely registered the room before she collapsed onto the bed. She was asleep within seconds, not even waking when Mrs. Chen came in to cover her with an extra quilt. Ryan checked on both his unexpected guests before heading to his own room. He found himself thinking about the young woman sleeping in his guest room, about the fear and determination in her eyes when she had spoken of her brother, about the way she had fought not to cry. She was stronger than she looked, that was certain. Life out here required strength, and Adelaide Harper clearly had it in abundance. The next few days fell into a pattern. Adelaide woke early the first morning, disoriented and panicking when she did not see Edmund. She found him still sleeping on the sofa, his fever broken, breathing easily. Ryan was already up, working with his men, but Mrs. Chen was there to provide breakfast and reassurance. Edmund improved rapidly with the medicine and rest. By the second day, he was awake and talking, embarrassed to find himself in a stranger's house and worried about their homestead. Adelaide assured him that everything would be fine, though she shared his concerns. It was late April, and they should have been planting already. Every day they lost made it less likely they would have a good harvest. Ryan returned to the house at midday to find Adelaide and Edmund having a worried conversation about this very topic. "I told you I would send some men over to help," he reminded Adelaide. "Tomorrow, if Edmund is up to riding home, I will have 6 men at your place ready to work. We will get your fields planted in 2 days, 3 at most." "Mr. Valdez, we truly cannot afford to pay your men," Edmund said, his young face serious. He looked like Adelaide, with the same dark hair and fine features, though his face was thinner from illness. "I am not asking you to pay them. I am paying them. They work for me, and I am telling them to help you. That is the end of it." "But why?" Adelaide asked. "We are strangers to you." Ryan sat down across from them, his expression thoughtful. "My father once told me that a man is only as rich as the community around him. If my neighbors fail, eventually I fail too. More than that, though, it is just the right thing to do. You would do the same for me if our positions were reversed, would you not?" Adelaide met his eyes and nodded slowly. Yes, we would." "Then it is settled. Tomorrow we get you 2 home and get your planting done." True to his word, Ryan appeared at the Harper homestead the next morning with 6 ranch hands and a wagon full of seed. Adelaide had been horrified by the state of their cabin when they arrived home the night before. In the days she had been gone, dust had settled over everything, the fire had gone cold, and there was a general air of neglect. She had stayed up late cleaning and preparing food for the workers who would arrive. Edmund tried to help with the planting, but he was still weak and started coughing after only an hour. Ryan sent him back inside with orders to rest, and Edmund went reluctantly, hating his own weakness. Adelaide brought water and food out to the workers, marveling at how quickly they transformed the fields. What would have taken her and Edmund weeks was accomplished in 2 days of hard work. Ryan worked alongside his men, and Adelaide found her eyes drawn to him repeatedly. He moved with an easy grace, his strength obvious in the way he handled the heavy work. When he caught her watching, he smiled, and Adelaide felt a strange flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with her near drowning. On the second evening, after the workers had gone home, Ryan stayed behind. He found Adelaide in the barn, tending to their 2 horses and the milk cow. "You have a good setup here," he said, looking around. "Your father built well." "He was good with his hands. He said being a doctor taught him patience and precision, and those skills worked for building too." Adelaide finished brushing down her mare and turned to face Ryan. "I do not know how to thank you properly. You saved my life, you saved Edmund, and now you have saved our farm. We owe you everything." Ryan stepped closer, and in the dim light of the barn, his eyes were very dark. "You do not owe me anything, Adelaide, but I would like to see you again, if you would allow it. Not because of obligation, but because I would like to know you better." Adelaide's heart hammered in her chest. "I would like that too." "Then I will come by in a few days once Edmund is stronger. Maybe you could show me some of that shooting skill you mentioned." "I could do that," Adelaide said, smiling. Ryan reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering for just a moment. "You are something special, Adelaide Harper. I knew it the moment I pulled you from that water." Then he was gone, riding off into the twilight, and Adelaide was left standing in the barn with her hand pressed to her cheek where his fingers had touched. The next week passed in a blur of work. Edmund recovered his strength slowly, and Adelaide kept busy with all the tasks their small farm required. But in the quiet moments, she found herself thinking about Ryan Valdez, about the kindness in his eyes and the strength in his hands. She thought about the way he had held her so carefully when she was weak, about his easy smile and his stubborn generosity. True to his word, Ryan arrived the following Saturday afternoon, riding up to their cabin with a rifle across his saddle. "I thought we could do some target practice," he called out, "if you are still willing to show me up." Adelaide came out of the cabin, her own rifle in hand and a competitive gleam in her eye. "I would be happy to. What are we shooting for?" "Pride," Ryan said with a grin. "And maybe dinner. Loser has to cook for the winner." They set up targets at various distances, and Adelaide proceeded to hit every single one dead center. Ryan was a good shot, but Adelaide was exceptional. Her father had taught her to shoot when she was 10, saying that a woman alone in this country needed to be able to protect herself and hunt for food. Adelaide had taken to it naturally, and years of practice had made her nearly infallible. "You are not joking," Ryan said, impressed and a little awed. "I have never seen shooting like that." "I told you I could outshoot most men," Adelaide said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "So what are you cooking for dinner?" Ryan laughed. "I deserved that. How about I take you into Julesburg for dinner instead? There's a restaurant that makes a decent steak." Adelaide hesitated. She had not been to town for a social occasion in months, maybe longer. After her father had died, she and Edmund had been so focused on survival that there had been no time for socializing. But looking at Ryan's hopeful expression, she found herself nodding. "I would like that. Let me change into something more appropriate." She went inside and found her best dress, a simple green cotton that her mother had made for her years ago. It was out of fashion and worn in places, but it was clean and brought out the color of her eyes. She brushed out her hair and pinned it up, feeling nervous and excited in equal measure. When she came out, Ryan's expression told her that the effort had been worth it. "You look beautiful," he said simply. They rode into Julesburg together, Adelaide on her mare and Ryan on his gelding. The town was busy with Saturday evening activity, people doing their weekly shopping and socializing. Ryan helped Adelaide dismount in front of the restaurant and offered his arm. Adelaide took it, very aware of the interested looks they were drawing. Julesburg was a small town, and everyone knew everyone's business. By tomorrow, the whole county would know that Adelaide Harper had been seen dining with Ryan Valdez. Adelaide found she did not care. Let them talk. The restaurant was simple but clean, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of good food in the air. They ordered steaks with potatoes and vegetables, and Ryan asked for coffee. Adelaide, remembering her confession about her terrible coffee, ordered tea. "Tell me about Texas," Adelaide said as they waited for their food. "What was it like growing up there?" Ryan leaned back in his chair, his expression nostalgic. "Hot, dry most of the year, then flooding rains when they came. My father's ranch was big, thousands of acres, but most of it was scrubland. We had to move the cattle constantly to find decent grazing. It was hard work, but I loved it. Being out on the range, just you and your horse and the sky going on forever." "Then why did you leave?" "Because it was not mine. It was my father's, and it would be my oldest brother's after him. I wanted something that belonged to me, something I built with my own hands. When I heard about land opening up in Colorado, I sold everything I had, bought a stake, and headed north. Best decision I ever made." "Do you ever miss it? Your family?" "Sometimes. I miss my mother every day. She was the heart of our family, the one who kept us all together. After she died, it was not the same. My father threw himself into work, and my brothers all went their own ways. We still love each other, but the closeness was gone." He paused, then asked, "What about you? Do you ever wish your father had stayed in Pennsylvania?" Adelaide considered the question seriously. "No. I think my parents were happy here. It was hard, but they had each other, and they were building something together. Mother used to say that the hardship made the good times sweeter. I did not understand what she meant when I was young, but I do now." Their food arrived, and they ate and talked about everything and nothing. Adelaide found Ryan easy to talk to, interested in her opinions and willing to share his own. He asked about her love of reading, and she told him about the books her father had brought from Pennsylvania, how she had read them until the pages were falling out. He told her about breaking horses, about the satisfaction of taking a wild, frightened animal and teaching it to trust. "It is not about breaking their spirit," he explained. "It is about building a partnership. The best horses are the ones who choose to work with you, not the ones forced into submission." "I like that," Adelaide said. "There's too much breaking and forcing in the world, not enough partnership." Ryan met her eyes across the table. "I agree. In all things, not just with horses." They lingered over coffee and tea until the restaurant began to close. Ryan paid despite Adelaide's protests, and they walked out into the cool evening air. The street was quieter now, most people having gone home for the night. Ryan offered his arm again, and they walked slowly toward where they had left their horses. "Thank you for this evening," Adelaide said. "I have not had time for anything like this in a long time. It was wonderful." "Then we should do it again," Ryan said. "Maybe next week?" "I would like that very much." They had reached the horses, and Ryan turned to face her fully. In the lamplight from the street, his face was half in shadow, making him look mysterious and dangerous and kind all at once. "Adelaide, I know we have not known each other long, but I want you to know that I'm serious about this, about getting to know you, about seeing where this might lead. I am not a man who plays games with hearts." Adelaide's breath caught. "Neither am I, and I'm serious too. You saved my life, Ryan, but more than that, you have been kinder to me and Edmund than anyone since our parents died. I want to know you better too. I want to see where this leads." Ryan smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "Good. Huh? That's very good." He helped her mount her horse, his hands lingering at her waist for just a moment longer than necessary. "Let me ride you home. It is late." They rode back to the Harper homestead under a sky full of stars, talking quietly about small things. When they reached the cabin, Edmund came out to greet them, looking much healthier than he had a week ago. "Good evening, Mr. Valdez," he said. "Thank you for looking after my sister." "It was my pleasure, and please call me Ryan. Mr. Valdez is my father." Edmund grinned. "Only if you call me Edmund, or Ed if you prefer." "Edmund it is." Ryan turned to Adelaide. "I will see you next week, if that is still agreeable." "It is very agreeable." "Thank you for dinner, Ryan." She watched him ride away, and Edmund came to stand beside her. "He's a good man," Edmund said quietly. "Father would have liked him." "Yes," Adelaide agreed. "I think he would have." The weeks that followed were the happiest Adelaide could remember in a long time. Ryan came by regularly, sometimes to help with work around the farm, sometimes just to visit. He taught Edmund better techniques for handling cattle and helped repair their barn roof. He brought Adelaide books from his own collection, and they spent long evenings reading and discussing them. But more than the practical help, it was the way Ryan made Adelaide feel that changed everything. When he looked at her, she felt beautiful and strong and capable. When he smiled at her, her heart raced. When he accidentally brushed against her hand, electricity seemed to spark between them. They went on more rides together, exploring the countryside around Julesburg. Ryan showed her the best fishing spots in the hidden meadows where wildflowers bloomed in profusion. Adelaide showed him the places her father had taken her as a child, sharing memories and stories. They talked about everything, their hopes, their fears, their dreams for the future. One evening in early June, they were sitting by the creek where he had saved her life. The water had calmed now, returning to its normal gentle flow. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Hard to believe this is the same creek that nearly killed you," Ryan said, skipping a stone across the water. "It seems like a lifetime ago," Adelaide said, "but also like yesterday. Strange how life can change so completely in just a few weeks." Ryan turned to look at her, his expression serious. "Adelaide, there is something I need to tell you, something I have been trying to work up the courage to say for weeks now." Adelaide's heart began to pound. "What is it?" "I'm in love with you." The words came out in a rush, as if he had been holding them back for too long. "I know it is soon. I know we have only known each other for 2 months, but I cannot keep it inside anymore. I love your strength and your kindness. I love the way you care for your brother and your farm. I love the way you shoot and read and laugh. I love everything about you, and I cannot imagine my life without you in it anymore." Adelaide felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I love you too, Ryan. I think I have loved you since the moment you pulled me from this creek. You saved my life in more ways than one." Ryan reached out and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "Can I kiss you?" "Yes," Adelaide whispered. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid of breaking the moment, but then Adelaide leaned into him, and the kiss deepened, becoming more urgent. Ryan's arms came around her, pulling her close, and Adelaide felt like she was drowning again, but in a completely different way. She was drowning in sensation, in emotion, in love. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Ryan rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, Adelaide. I know it is fast. I know I should wait and court you properly. But I do not want to wait. I want to spend every day with you. I want to build a life together. Marry me. Adelaide pulled back enough to look into his eyes. Yes, yes, I will marry you. Ryan let out a whoop of joy that startled the birds from the trees and swept Adelaide up in his arms, spinning her around until they were both dizzy and laughing. When he set her down, he kissed her again, longer and deeper, sealing their promise. They told Edmund that evening, and he was overjoyed, immediately declaring that Ryan was now officially his brother. They made plans to marry in July, giving them time to prepare, but not waiting too long. Adelaide wanted a simple ceremony in the church in Julesburg, with just close friends and neighbors attending. The next weeks were a flurry of activity. Adelaide worked on her wedding dress, altering her mother's white gown to fit her. Ryan worked on preparing the ranch house for his new wife, adding touches he thought she would like. He had Mrs. Chen help him choose new curtains and linens, wanting everything to be perfect. They discussed what would happen to the Harper homestead. Edmund was insistent that he could manage it himself now that he was healthy again, and Adelaide was worried about leaving him alone. After much discussion, they decided that Edmund would continue to work the homestead, with help from Ryan's ranch hands when needed, and that he would take his meals at the ranch house most days. It was not a perfect solution, but it meant Adelaide could keep an eye on her brother while starting her new life with Ryan. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, sunny and warm, but not hot. Adelaide stood in the small room at the back of the church, looking at herself in the mirror. Her mother's dress fit her perfectly, and she had pinned wildflowers in her hair. She looked happy, she realized, truly happy for the first time in years. There was a knock on the door, and Edmund entered. He had put on his father's suit, brushed and mended for the occasion, and he looked so grown up that Adelaide felt tears threaten. "You look beautiful, sister," he said. "Mother and father would be so proud." "I wish they were here," Adelaide said softly. "They are here. I feel them, and they are happy for you. Ryan is a good man, Adelaide. He will take care of you, and you will take care of him. That is how it should be." Adelaide hugged her brother tightly. "Thank you for being happy for me. I know this changes things. It changes things for the better. Now, are you ready? Your husband-to-be is waiting, and he looks like he might wear a hole in the church floor from pacing." Adelaide laughed and took her brother's arm. Together, they walked out into the church, and Adelaide's eyes immediately found Ryan standing at the altar. He was dressed in a new black suit, his hair freshly cut, and the look on his face when he saw her made her heart soar. He looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. They exchanged vows in front of Doc Patterson, Mrs. Chen, Jake the foreman, and about 20 neighbors and friends. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Ryan kissed Adelaide with such tenderness that several women in the congregation sighed. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food prepared by half the county. There was music and dancing, and Adelaide felt like she was floating through a dream. She danced with Ryan, with Edmund, with Jake, and several neighbors. But always her eyes returned to her husband, and always he was watching her with love in his eyes. As evening fell and the guests began to leave, Ryan pulled Adelaide aside. "Ready to start our life together, Mrs. Valdez?" Adelaide smiled at the name. Mrs. Valdez. It sounded right. "More than ready?" They said goodnight to the last guests and walked hand in hand to the ranch house. Mrs. Chen had discreetly retired to her own cottage, and Edmund had gone back to the homestead, leaving them alone. Ryan carried Adelaide over the threshold, making her laugh, and set her down gently in the bedroom. "I love you," he said, pulling her close. "I will love you until the day I die and beyond." "I love you too," Adelaide whispered against his lips. "Thank you for saving me, Ryan, in every possible way." That night they became husband and wife in truth, learning each other with gentle hands and whispered words. Adelaide had been nervous, but Ryan was patient and loving, and by the time the moon rose high in the sky, Adelaide felt like she had finally come home. The first months of marriage were a time of adjustment and joy. Adelaide learned the rhythms of the ranch, working alongside Ryan and his men. She was not content to be just a housewife, and Ryan loved that about her. She helped with the cattle, broke horses alongside him, and even rode out with the men when they needed extra hands. Edmund thrived with the support of the ranch community. He regained his strength and proved to be an excellent farmer, producing a good harvest that first year. He took his evening meals at the ranch most days, and Adelaide was grateful to still be close to her brother. As fall turned to winter, Adelaide realized she was pregnant. She told Ryan one snowy evening in December, and his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing and crying at the same time, before carefully setting her down as if she were made of glass. "We are going to have a baby," he said wonderingly. "Adelaide, we are going to be parents." "I know. Are you happy?" "Happy? I'm the happiest man alive." He knelt down and kissed her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. I am your father, and I already love you more than words can say." Adelaide ran her fingers through his hair, overwhelmed with love for this man and the life growing inside her. "We should tell Edmund." They told him over dinner the next evening, and Edmund's reaction was almost as enthusiastic as Ryan's had been. "I am going to be an uncle. Wait until I tell everyone in town. They are all going to be so jealous." The winter passed slowly, and Adelaide grew round with pregnancy. Ryan was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worrying about her. Adelaide found it endearing and exasperating in equal measure. Doc Patterson assured them everything was progressing normally, and Adelaide felt strong and healthy despite the discomfort of late pregnancy. Spring came again, bringing with it the memory of that day a year ago when Adelaide had nearly drowned. On the anniversary, Ryan took her to the creek, which was swollen with runoff again, though not as dramatically as the year before. "1 year ago, I pulled a crazy woman out of this creek," he said, putting his arm around her expanded waist. "Best day of my life." "Best day of mine, too," Adelaide agreed, "even if I did swallow half the creek and ruin my best dress. You can ruin all your dresses if it means I get to keep you forever." Adelaide went into labor on a warm day in early May, just as the wildflowers were beginning to bloom. Ryan sent Jake racing for Doc Patterson while he stayed with Adelaide, holding her hand and trying not to panic. Edmund arrived soon after, and the three of them waited through the long hours of labor. Doc Patterson arrived in time to deliver the baby, and as the sun set that evening, Adelaide gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Ryan cried when he first held his son, this tiny, perfect person they had created together. "He is beautiful," he whispered. "He is perfect." "What should we name him?" Adelaide asked, exhausted but happy. They had discussed names for months but never decided. Now, looking at his son, Ryan knew. "Thomas, after your father, Thomas Harper Valdez." Adelaide's eyes filled with tears. "My father would have been honored. Thomas it is." Little Thomas was an easy baby, healthy and happy. He had his mother's dark hair and his father's brown eyes, and both his parents were completely besotted with him. Edmund was a devoted uncle, coming by almost every day to visit his nephew. Life settled into a new rhythm. Ryan continued to build the ranch, expanding the herd and improving the facilities. Adelaide managed the household and cared for Thomas while still helping with ranch work when she could. They were happy, busier than ever, but happy in a deep, contented way. When Thomas was 2 years old, Adelaide became pregnant again. This time, she gave birth to a daughter in the spring of 1879. They named her Rose Catherine, Rose for the wildflowers that bloomed all over their property, and Catherine for Ryan's mother. Rose was small and delicate, with her father's features and her mother's determination. The years passed in a blur of activity and love. Thomas grew into a sturdy boy who loved horses and followed his father everywhere. Rose was quieter, but just as strong-willed, with a talent for drawing and a love of books that reminded Adelaide of herself. Edmund eventually married a young widow from town named Sarah, and they built a house on the Harper homestead. He and Sarah had 3 children of their own, and the cousins grew up together, as close as siblings. The ranch prospered under Ryan's careful management. He became known throughout the territory as a fair employer and an honest dealer. Adelaide became involved in the community, helping to start a school in Julesburg and organizing charity drives for families in need. Together, they built not just a ranch, but a legacy. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ryan took Adelaide back to the creek where he had saved her life. It was spring again, and the water was high but not dangerous. They stood on the bank, hand in hand, watching the water flow past. "Do you ever regret it?" Ryan asked. "Marrying me so quickly, tying your life to mine?" Adelaide looked at him, at the man who had become her whole world, and smiled. "Not for a single second. You saved my life that day, Ryan, and every day since. You gave me love, a family, a home. How could I ever regret that? I am the one who should be grateful. You made my house a home. You gave me children and love and purpose. Before you, I had a ranch. Now, I have a life." They kissed by the creek just as they had 10 years before, and Adelaide thought about how strange and wonderful life could be. One moment of desperation, one foolish attempt to cross a swollen creek had led to everything she held dear. If she had not tried to cross, if Ryan had not been riding that fence line, if he had been just a minute later, none of this would exist. Their children would not exist. Their love would not exist. But he had been there. He had saved her. And everything that came after was built on that foundation of courage and kindness and love. As they walked back to the ranch house, Adelaide saw Thomas and Rose playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the spring breeze. She saw the barn Ryan had built with his own hands, the corral full of horses they had broken together, the house that held all their memories and dreams. She saw Edmund riding up with Sarah and their children for Sunday dinner, a tradition they had maintained for years. This was her life. This was her family. And it had all started with a drowning girl and a cowboy who had not hesitated to ride into danger to save her. Years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows. Mrs. Chen passed away peacefully in her sleep when she was 78, and they buried her on a hill overlooking the ranch she had helped build. Jake eventually became a full partner in the ranch operation, proving himself time and again. Doc Patterson retired and moved east to live with his daughter, and a young doctor named Michael Chen, Mrs. Chen's grandson, took his place. Thomas grew into a fine young man, as skilled with horses as his father. He married a rancher's daughter from the next county over when he was 22, and they built a house on the far side of the ranch property. Rose married a school teacher who had come west from Boston, a gentleman who loved her fierce independence and shared her love of learning. They moved to Denver, where he taught at a university, but they visited often, and Rose wrote long letters to her mother every week. Edmund and Sarah's children all thrived. Their oldest son took over the Harper homestead, proving to be an even better farmer than his father. The Harper and Valdez families remained close, their bonds unbreakable. Ryan and Adelaide grew old together, their hair turning gray, their faces lining with wrinkles earned through years of laughter and hard work. But their love never faded. If anything, it grew stronger, deepening with each passing year. They still held hands when they walked, still kissed each other good morning and good night, still looked at each other with the same love that had sparked by a swollen creek decades before. On a warm evening in June of 1903, they sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sunset over the mountains. They were both in their 70s now, slowed by age, but still sharp in mind and warm in heart. Their grandchildren were playing in the yard, Thomas and Rose's children, 7 grandchildren in all, each one precious and loved. "We built something good, did we not?" Ryan said, his voice rougher with age but still strong. "We built something wonderful," Adelaide agreed, leaning against his shoulder. "A family, a home, a life, all because you were brave enough to ride into a creek after a drowning woman. All because you were brave enough to try to save your brother. Your courage inspired mine." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their grandchildren play. The oldest, Thomas's son Ryan Jr., was teaching the younger ones to rope a post, just as his grandfather had taught him. The sound of their laughter filled the air, mingling with the evening bird song. "I have been thinking," Adelaide said after a while, "about what happens next. We are not young anymore, Ryan. I know, but I am not afraid. However long we have left, we will have it together. And when our time comes, we will leave behind something that matters. Children who love and are loved, land that is well cared for, a community we helped build. That is more than most people can say." "I just want you to know," Adelaide said, taking his hand, "that you have given me the most wonderful life. Every day with you has been a gift. I love you more now than I did the day we married, and I did not think that was possible." Ryan raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "And I love you more than words can express. You are my heart, Adelaide. You always have been, from the moment I saw you in that water. You always will be." They watched the sunset together, their hands intertwined, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had built. The mountains turned purple in the fading light, and the stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky. From the house came the smell of dinner cooking, and the sound of their daughter-in-law calling the children inside to wash up. "Come on," Ryan said, standing slowly and offering Adelaide his hand. "Let us go have dinner with our family." Adelaide took his hand and let him help her up, just as he had helped her so many times before. Together, they walked into the house, into the warmth and light and love that filled every corner. They sat at the head of the table, surrounded by children and grandchildren, and said grace with grateful hearts. In the years that followed, they continued to live fully, enjoying their grandchildren and watching the ranch continue to thrive under Thomas's management. They took slow walks together every evening, weather permitting, and spent long hours reading together by the fire. They told stories to their grandchildren about the old days, about the Wild West they had known, about the day a foolish girl tried to cross a swollen creek and a cowboy saved her life. Ryan passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1907, at the age of 79. He went to bed after a good day spent with his family, kissed his wife good night, told her he loved her one last time, and simply did not wake up. Adelaide was devastated, but also grateful. He had not suffered, had not lingered in pain. He had lived a full, good life and had died peacefully, surrounded by love. She scattered some of his ashes by the creek where they had met, where their love story had begun. The rest she kept in an urn on the mantel, alongside photographs of their life together. She lived for another 8 years, staying active and involved with her family. She saw all her grandchildren grow up, attended their weddings, held their babies. She was matriarch of a large, loving family, and she carried Ryan in her heart every moment of every day. On a spring morning in 1915, Adelaide Harper Valdez passed away quietly in her sleep. She was 85 years old. Her children found her in her bed, a peaceful expression on her face, her hand resting on a framed photograph of Ryan that she kept on her bedside table. On her pillow was a letter she had written the night before, to be opened after her death. Thomas read it aloud at her funeral, tears streaming down his face. In it, Adelaide thanked her children for the joy they had brought her, thanked her grandchildren for carrying on the legacy she and Ryan had built, and expressed her gratitude for the life she'd been given. She wrote about the day Ryan had saved her from the creek, about how one moment of courage and kindness had led to a lifetime of love. She wrote about how she was not afraid to die because she knew she would be with Ryan again, and that death was not an ending, but just another beginning. "Live boldly," she wrote at the end. "Love deeply. Help others when you can. Build something that matters. These are the lessons your father and I learned, and they are the legacy we leave you. We started with nothing but love and determination, and look what we built. You can do the same. Make us proud, but more importantly, make yourselves proud. Live lives you can look back on with satisfaction and peace. That is all we ever wanted for you." They buried Adelaide next to Ryan on the hill overlooking the ranch, near Mrs. Chen. The whole community turned out for the funeral, 3 generations of people whose lives had been touched by Adelaide and Ryan Valdez. They told stories about the couple, about their kindness and generosity, about the love that had been obvious to everyone who knew them. They talked about how the ranch had been a gathering place for the community, how Adelaide and Ryan had helped so many people over the years, how their love had been an inspiration. The ranch continued under Thomas's management, and later his sons and his grandsons. The Harper homestead remained in Edmund's family line. Both properties prospered, and the families remained close through the generations. The story of how Ryan and Adelaide met became family legend, told and retold to each new generation of children. The creek where Adelaide had nearly drowned became a special place, visited by family members who wanted to remember the couple who had built their legacy. More than 100 years later, descendants of Ryan and Adelaide Valdez still worked the land in Colorado, still told the story of the drowning girl and the cowboy who saved her. The ranch house had been expanded and modernized, but the original structure remained at its heart, carefully preserved. Photographs of Ryan and Adelaide hung on the walls, their faces young and full of hope in some, lined with age and wisdom in others, but always showing the love that had sustained them through everything. The story of their love had become more than just family history. It had become a testament to the power of courage, of kindness, of taking chances on love even when it seemed too fast or too foolish. It had become a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best things, that disaster and salvation can be separated by seconds, that one person's bravery can change everything. Adelaide had been drowning in a swollen creek after spring thaw. Ryan had ridden in and pulled her out. And from that single moment of crisis and rescue, a love story had bloomed that lasted a lifetime and echoed through generations. They had built a family, a home, a legacy. They had loved each other with everything they had, through good times and bad, through joy and sorrow, through all the years given to them. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Not the wealth they had accumulated or the land they had owned, but the love they had shared and the family they had created. They had lived boldly and loved deeply, just as Adelaide had advised in her final letter. They had helped others and built something that mattered. They had lived lives they could look back on with satisfaction and peace. Their story was one of the Old West, of a time and place that no longer existed except in history and memory. But it was also a timeless story, one that spoke to the universal human experiences of love and loss, courage and fear, desperation and hope. It was a reminder that heroes come in all forms, that sometimes a hero is just a cowboy riding fence line who happens to be in the right place at the right time. It was a testament to the fact that love can begin in the most unexpected ways and grow into something beautiful and lasting. The creek still flowed past the ranch, swelling each spring with snowmelt from the mountains. Sometimes it flooded its banks, dangerous and wild. Sometimes it ran gentle and clear, safe to cross. But always, it reminded those who knew the story of the day it had brought two souls together, the day a young woman's desperation and a young man's courage had combined to create something extraordinary. And if you listened carefully on spring evenings, when the water was high and the wildflowers bloomed along the banks, some said you could almost hear the echo of Adelaide's scream cut short, the thunder of hooves as Ryan rode to save her, and later, much later, the sound of their laughter as they sat by that same creek, watching their grandchildren play, grateful for every moment they had been given. That was the legacy of Adelaide Harper and Ryan Valdez, a love born from crisis, nurtured through challenges, and sustained across a lifetime. A love that began with a drowning and a rescue, and ended only when death itself took them, and perhaps not even then. For love like theirs does not truly end. It lives on in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, in the land they tended, in the community they built, in the story that continues to be told. They had been given a chance, one brief moment when everything could have gone wrong, but instead went right. And they had taken that chance and built from it a life worth living, a love worth remembering, a story worth telling. In the end, what more could anyone ask for than that? What greater success could there be than to love and be loved, to build and create, to leave the world better than you found it? Adelaide and Ryan had done all of that and more. They had started with nothing but determination and each other, and they had created something that lasted far beyond their own lives. They had proven that one moment of courage could change everything, that kindness and love were the most powerful forces in the world, that even in the wild and dangerous West, beauty and tenderness could flourish. Their story was complete, their ending happy, their legacy secure. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, they were together still, holding hands and watching over the family they had created, the love they had shared continuing on through time, eternal and unbreakable, just as it had always been. The creek flowed on, spring followed winter, and love endured. That was the way of things, the natural order, the truth that Adelaide and Ryan had understood from the very beginning. It had all started with water and fear and a cowboy brave enough to ride in, and it had become something beautiful, something lasting, something worth every moment they had lived. Their love story had reached its conclusion, but the love itself would never end. It lived on in every person who carried their blood, in every acre of land they had tended, in every heart touched by their story. And that was exactly as it should be, exactly as they would have wanted it, a fitting end to a life well lived and a love well loved, complete and perfect and forever.